Hello, Howard Levy. How are you?
I'm alive and well and happy to be on whatever you want to call this with you.
Well, thank you. I am calling it the Howard Levy Show. No,
Oh,
actually, just an opportunity for people to get to know you a little bit closer to the way I do, which will take about 19 years of traveling the world and doing many
yeah,
gigs together.
we've had a lot of great times, and one of the cool things is that especially now when we can't travel and we can't play gigs, is how many of our really good performances have been filmed and recorded very well and are available for people to watch on
Yeah, we're starting to see those. Those are starting to kind of creep out there on YouTube, and they're being posted on Facebook and things like that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so how you doing, man? How you hanging in there?
Well, it's the thing is, you have to get used to this new reality, and I know that it's going to keep changing and morphing into, different realities. And we're trying not to leave the house very much, and
Right. Me
obviously,
neither.
the amount of interactions you can have in person with people has been vastly cut down.
Hmm.
And as a musician, that's what I like doing the most is playing with people like you and our band, the Howard
Likewise.
Levy
Yeah.
Four. And this is what floats my boat. But uh, I can't do that now. And uh, we could talk a little bit later about the possibility of interactions online with certain
Right.
programs that I have not tried yet. But
Everything is sort of in the research and development stage at this point. There's lots of people trying all kinds of things.
yeah,
Apparently, there are some software programs that can get you closer to being able to play together. Of course, it would be with the sort of latency that you would find in the studio, where you can still play, but come on, you know.
yeah, if the buffer size is too large in Pro Tools, if you set it to 512, then you can't really play with someone else.
Yeah.
You're always a little off.
So I
But
mean, I'm sure something will come along sooner or later. I don't know of any specifically, but I know that there are people really trying to get that platform up and running.
yes, well, I'll talk about that in a little while because I have some specific names of things and reasons
Cool.
why. But one of the things I've been doing is I've been recording a lot of solo piano.
Hmm.
Uh, and originally, the idea was that it was going to be background music for a project, which I don't really want to talk about right now. But
Uh,
somehow or other,
Top secret.
well, sort of. But the fact that it was going to be background music made me play in a different way where I'm not being extroverted. I'm being guided by some other principle. And I've improvised a lot of stuff over the last month, like hours of it. And some of it, when I went back and listened, I wasn't really conscious of how I was doing it.
Hmm.
Um,
Sometimes
some
that's
of
when the coolest stuff happens, though, right?
Well, yeah, it sort of reminds me of the stuff I used to do with Ken Nordine, who was a genius spoken word artist in Chicago who died last year at the age of 98, I believe it was. Um,
Man.
and there was always a kind of a, I don't know, I can't really put it into words, but I just felt kind of like something was guiding me when I was playing at his place,
Right.
laying down things that he was going to talk on later, or doing things with him
Hmm.
live. Some of what he did was, reading off things that he had written. Some of it was improvised with us. And, sometimes it was just me, sometimes a band.
Right.
So these things I've been improvising, I decided that whatever you want to call it these days, if a CD, download, or whatever it is, I'm going to put it out.
A body
And,
of work. Yeah.
thank you. Uh,
Yeah.
and I'm
It
going to
still
call,
kind of is, you know. I mean,
well, yeah. And I'm calling it Looking Inward. I
nice.
was thinking about it, and that's what it sounds like and feels like. Some of these things I gave titles to after I played them. Some of them were just like number one, number five, and I went back and listened. Some of them are 2 minutes long, some of them are 5 minutes long, and I overdubbed on one of them. I overdubbed mandolin. Did I send that one to you?
I don't think you did. No. But
Ah,
I'm eager to hear it.
After we're through, I'll send
Cool.
it to you, because I listened back, and it was very compositional, and so I actually duplicated some of my piano melodies on mandolin.
Hmm.
I'm not by any means a great mandolin player, but
You can play. I've heard you.
well, I don't have any
You piss me
calluses.
off, but whatever. It's cool. You can play saxophone and penny whistle and everything too. Oh, and just to interrupt you, really quick, I just want to announce for those of you who may not know that this is Howard Levy, world famous, innovative harmonica player extraordinaire, who actually reinvented the instrument so that it can be played chromatically on a diatonic harp and
Yes, I
play
did.
every conceivable style of music in any key on one single harmonica. I've seen him do it for 19 years, and I'm telling you, shit is crazy. So this is Howard Levy, one of the founder members of Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, among many other things. And we're going to get to sort of your origins here in town and your work with John Prine, who sadly passed away from COVID-19 recently.
Yes.
And, just the scene and the inception of Chevrolet and, or Chevrolet,
Chévere.
Chevrolet.
Yeah, like ch in
I'm
Spanish.
such a white boy from the suburbs. It's
Oh, no,
ridiculous.
no, no. CH in Portuguese is sh.
Sure.
In Spanish, it's ch. So it's chévere.
Chevrolet.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, great Latin band with really, really thick origins in town with amazing players. Just a sort of a Chicago staple icon, but a worldwide legend in terms of how he was able to carry the instrument forward further than anyone who ever attempted it at the time. So we'll get back to your story about. I just wanted to make that clear that this is Howard Levy and I'm Chris Siebold, and we've been playing together for 19 years. I met Howard in the fall of 2001, I want to say, or the spring of 2001.
Wow.
And the intention was to do a group scenario where I would play acoustic guitar. And initially it was like a group, it was going to be an electric group at first.
Yes.
And then you did a radio broadcast with the great Pat Fleming.
Yes.
And decided to take more of an acoustic tack, and that was the birth of Acoustic Express with
Yep.
Larry Cohut, Pat Fleming, myself, and Howard there. And that's how we got. I mean, I was invited to Howard's house from a recommendation from a mutual friend of ours, Larry Cohut, one of the most amazing musicians in the world, and mutual friendship. And I came to Howard's house, and we played music for like 6.5 hours, and my eyes and brain were bleeding out of my ears by the time I left, but it was an amazing experience, and here we are 19 years later, man. Pretty incredible. A lot of world tours, a lot of recordings, and all sorts of gigs under all sorts of circumstances.
Yeah, it's really amazing to think about it. And one of the reasons I like playing with you so much is that you have so much spirit. And, not to mention your guitar playing. I mean, that goes without saying, really.
Well, what I don't have in guitar playing, I make up with spirit for sure.
Well, no, you're fearless too. And, something incredibly difficult, you go, oh, I'll learn that. And you have you have the chops to be able to play absolutely anything, but also live when we play together, there's, we take chances and risks, and we have a sense of humor and a sense of adventure. And I
there's a
think
dynamism to it. Yeah.
Thank you. That's the great word. Yes.
Thank you. I was waiting all day to use it. So that's cool. So it looks like you got sort of a more introspective project in the works, which is good news for me because I happen to be a fan of your ballad writing and sort of your more cinematic type of compositions, like your harmonica concerto is very, very evocative piece of music. Goes from sort of Americana to tango to some Middle Eastern sort of themes, and just kind of all over the place. So I'm in one of my favorite tunes of yours is Lombriga from the Trio Globo debut record, which is out there digitally, right? You can get it
Yes,
digitally.
yes, you can.
I recommend that everyone, well, get all 3 records because they're all amazing. The self-titled, and then Carnival of Souls, right? And then there is Steering by the Stars.
Yes.
Those 3 records by Trio Global, which is Glenn Velez and Eugene Freese and Howard. It's a trio that sounds like a chamber orchestra. It's really fantastic stuff. And the writing, everybody contributes to the writing, and it's just beautiful, spiritual, and very heady music. I mean, I was especially impressed by Steering by the Stars. It seemed like every other tune on there was sort of a mind warper, like of course the version of Giant Steps in 11/8 is in there, and I know for colleagues and especially students of mine, if you haven't checked that out, that is. Could you give us a little something? Are you warmed up enough to just?
Oh yeah, I'm always warmed up. You can wake me up at 5 in the morning and I can play. So
Yeah. So here's
well that actually it's in 10/8. The
10/8,
melody,
okay.
and then I solo in 7/8. I solo in 5/4 and 7/8. But
I thought it was like a ta 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 ta.
no, it's
Oh,
whoa, something happened here. What, there's a chorus on this thing? Yeah,
yeah. It's the smooth jazz patch.
yeah. Oh, I put my hand on the split.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
It almost has a stride quality after a little while when you play it. It's sort of like an an odd meter stride almost with the left hand.
It can be.
Yeah. So just imagine that with beautiful frame drums and a cello.
That's into 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I changed it into 7/8. The idea was to
Dun, 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 dun.
yeah, 2, 2, 3. The idea was to fit 14/8 notes into where 10/8 notes had been before. That was the idea. It's like it's a big 1.
Naturally.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would be like 14/10. Of course.
Why not?
Anyway, but
Yeah, man, that's awesome.
thanks. Yeah, I spent years chasing Giant Steps, and I finally caught up with it. So
We never worked that one out because I was always just like, what if I just completely suck and blow my credibility all on the same evening? But yeah, I mean, the other thing that's fascinating, that's always been fascinating to me, especially as your collaborator for so many years, is the ease with which you are able to play odd time signatures. You won a Grammy Award for a tune called "Life in 11" from the most recent Bela Fleck record.
yeah,
And man, I've played 11 grooves with you. We've played those Gankino grooves together,
yeah.
but that's a really, really difficult thing to navigate around because it's such a specific subdivision in how it's felt. But you have such a fluidity with it Could you demonstrate a little bit of how you think about playing an 11?
Sure. Well, uh, in 1979, when I got off the road with John Prine, and that's another discussion,
Right.
uh, I came back to Chicago with a little bit of a raised profile from my first big national gig, and that is when I joined a whole bunch of bands, 79 and 80, and started some bands. So I joined Chevrolet, and I started playing Jazz at Noon at Andy's right around that time. And I started playing with Bonnie Kolock, and I also started a band called the Balkan Rhythm Band, which eventually put out with Pat Fleming and guitarist Steve Roberts, two guitarists, and Bill Lamphere, amazing bass player who moved out to California.
He's the Where Does the Time Come From guy, right? He's
Oh,
the guy that did Stars and Stripes Forever and Seven, right?
yes, and also the backwards version of New York, New York.
Yeah.
You ever heard that?
Yeah.
He played bass with Madonna for a while.
Oh, great.
He can play anything, and he and Ernie Denoff were roommates. That's how I met Bill originally, and we played in bands together on Lincoln Avenue. But anyway,
Ernie Denoff, another incredible Chicago stalwart musician, beautiful guitar player.
Great guitar player in Chevrolet. So all these things are interacting, and the Chicago music scene of the late 70s, early 80s was just full of diversity of musical styles. And I, being somebody who's interested in all different styles, I really flourished in this atmosphere of like, oh, I'm going to play some Bulgarian music and some Brazilian music and some Afro-Cuban music and jazz, and write my own stuff. I started the NBV quintet.
Yep.
Which
was just recently re-released, huh? Your archive
released for the first time in
okay.
from the vaults. Yeah.
So those recordings didn't exist officially before that came out. There was no. And
No.
what is the name of the band stand for? No Bad Vibes.
No Bad Vibes.
No Bad Vibes.
Yeah, it was.
Was that in fact true, or did some bad vibes eventually creep in at some point?
No, it was true.
It was true.
Yeah, we just had a blast playing all the time. I mean, it was all these. There are several different. Well, anyway, I'll talk about that in a second. But let me get back to the 11.
Yeah, this is This is how it's gonna work, folks. There's gonna be a million threads, and you got to follow them all. Okay.
Yes, it's hard to be me sometimes,
But it's hard to be
anyway.
me listening to you sometimes.
So the 11.
Yeah, we're talking about 11/8. Yep.
It's a dance rhythm from Bulgaria called the Gonkino or Krivo Oro. There's another name for it too, I can't remember. But this band, the Balkan Rhythm Band, that I started with a guy named Taran Dorer, who played the kaval, which is the Bulgarian flute, and some dumbek. And he really understood the music pretty well. And I was just somebody who admired the music. And I met him kind of by chance looking through some ads in the Reader where he was advertising for people to try to start a band. And I went, wow, I've always wanted to, not always, but I've wanted to play Bulgarian music for the last few years. And so here's my chance. And then I got a bunch of my jazz musician friends interested, as we were discussing. And he got these two women who had studied Bulgarian and Macedonian vocals at these Balkan music camps, and we put this band together called the Balkan Rhythm Band. And a lot of that music is in what we think of as odd time meters, and they're fast odd time meters, 5/8, 7/8, 9/8, 11/8. And people in Bulgaria and in this part of that part of Eastern Europe are just brought up thinking that these are normal. And so, they're just groups of twos and threes. Like, the 5 would be 2 and 3. I'm just playing something silly, but
yeah. That's better.
1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1. That's why you're saying the stride feels
Yeah, it's sort of like a stride feel if you're on a boat that's tilted like this. Well,
and then the 7/8 was 2 2 and 3. 1 2 1 2 1 2. But we think of it as quick slow.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
tuck, 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 tuck. Those are the pulses. And then there's the 7/8. That's the 3/2/2 that I wrote Lumbriga in. 1 2 3 1 2 1 2. that's a slower one called the Lesnodo, Macedonian rhythm.
Yeah, that's the one that we play in Jovano. Is that correct?
Yes, the same thing. Yeah, yeah.
I love that.
That's the
See, I
wrong
can
thing.
handle that. I can play in that signature all right.
Because that gives you more space. It's slower, and
Yeah.
you know, and it's in a weird way. It's kind of like a warped waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
It's weird. I mean,
The waltz on stilts.
but it's very comfortable.
Yeah.
Once you get used to these things, they're just different ways of dividing one. And you feel it in your body, and then you can play it. But it took me a long time to be able to solo on these rhythms. So
I think that's an important point you bring up, though, with how you consider some of these things to be short, long, or,
Yeah.
Rather than counting like the literal subdivisions of it, it becomes something that just glides along after a while. You're not really thinking of the subdivisions, which helps,
Absolutely.
obviously, in your interpretation of the rhythm itself, thereby making it easier for you to conceive of things to do rhythmically over the top of it. If you have that sort of long, short, long, short thing to sort of glide over, rather than going 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, or whatever the case may be.
Exactly. So the 11, which we are getting to here, is 2, 2, 3, 2, 2. It's kind of a palindromic rhythm of 4, 3, and 4, or 2, 2, 3, 2, 2. Quick, quick, slow, quick, 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 slow, quick, slow, quick, quick.
You remember it? Do you remember Karloff's?
Yeah. Is it in D?
Yeah.
Or C? I can't remember.
No, you're right. It's in C. It's in C. Yeah. I want to pick up my guitar and join you, but I can't do it.
Yeah, so on the harmonica, it was in.
Oh, yeah. Short, long, short,
Anyway, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, man.
Piano harmonica thing, yeah.
That was that's a whole other thing. We got to get to it, but I don't want to keep you here all night. But yeah, I mean that's that's fantastic, and it's not something that's not a rhythm that a lot of people play. I noticed that in contemporary jazz music, a lot of people sort of pull from that Bulgarian side of things, but more it seems melodically than really going for the Ganchino 11/8 situation. And it's just really cool rhythm to play, really liberating rhythm to solo over once you kind of get the hang of how the feel is, because
I think
playing
so.
against it evenly is really cool. Like, I mean, there are things that you could do even arbitrarily that sound great.
Yeah. Actually, on the first Trio Globo record, I took a Manfredo Fest tune that was a Samba Trace and turned it into an 11/8.
Oh yeah, Brazilian Dorian Dream.
Yeah, like
So great.
so I'm just keeping the that in the right hand and soloing in the left hand. So, but like I said in the beginning, this was from playing all of this Bulgarian music. I was playing a lot of actually on saxophone, a lot of it, hardly any of it on piano or harmonica.
He's a saxophone player as well.
I used to be.
Oh, yeah.
I totally stopped. But playing it for dancers, for folk dancers, and seeing them move to it,
Yeah.
it's just like if you're playing a rock band and people dance, that's the thing. Or a Latin band watching people dance, playing in a salsa band, watching people dance to it. It's like, oh, that's why this exists.
Do you
And
remember
jazz, yeah, yeah.
that one festival? I think it was the Rogers Park Jazz Fest. Where is that? What we played something in '9, I think. What was it? Was
Oh
it
no,
Eiffel
no,
Waffle?
oh no, I remember what it was. Um,
And people started dancing, like
yes,
actually doing the dance of the tune we were playing.
we were
Was it the
playing
Ganquino or?
we were playing the Ganquino, and I would make this joke when we played with Acoustic Express. When we played this, I said, "Hey, if there's any Balkan folk dancers in the audience, you can get up and dance to this." And
Right.
there were
Which
three
never,
of them there,
it never happens. Except for now, except for that. Yeah.
and they stood up and they danced to perfect Ganquino to it. It was just,
Yeah.
I think the audience was, they
That
thought
was
they
so
were
cool.
plants or something. It was so cool. Yeah,
Yeah. It's great when things, I mean, that can only happen. I mean, Rogers Park,
yeah.
uh, anywhere with a lot of ethnic diversity. I think if you were to call the tune around here, I mean, no offense to the fine Batavian people, but I don't think anybody would know what a Ganquino even is. I mean, maybe they do. Who knows? But it's amazing when you're in sort of a cultural center and something like that happens very spontaneously. It's really kind of magical.
Well, it's funny. We're talking about all this, and the name of my record label is Balkan Samba Music,
Yes.
Samba Records. It's my publishing company too, and there's a very funny story behind that.
Very fine record right here. If you
Oh,
can,
there it is.
yeah.
There we are.
It's probably not the right way around, but this is Art and Adrenaline. It's the release that Howard and I have, and it's catalog number 011 in
Yeah.
the Balkan Samba pantheon.
I didn't even realize we were number 11. Well,
Yeah,
11.
turn it up to 11, man.
So,
I just watched The Mighty Wind the other night. I love that movie.
yes.
The tribute to Fred Willard.
Yeah, there's a lot of people going right now, and luckily he lived to a ripe old age and didn't perish from the virus, just from being 87 years old or something like that.
And being a big guy. He's a really big guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My friend CJ Vanston does all the music for all their movies.
Yeah, Chicago guy makes good,
Yeah.
LA
He's an amazing musician and
knows everybody.
very brilliant guy, just sort of a natural talent who applied himself as hard as possible. And also his dad was a great pianist, and his dad unfortunately just passed away also from medical things, but not the virus. So it's kind of a tragedy. And CJ, if you're watching this, my heart goes out to you.
Yeah, CJ. Hey, man. I also the other night I watched Waiting for Guffman, and not a lot of people know this, but CJ Vanston did all the music for Waiting for Guffman. All the arrangements were CJ's, and some of my favorite tunes, Nothing Ever Happens on Mars, and the rest of that is brilliant, and the arrangements are fantastic. So yeah, CJ, heart goes out to you, man. When we played the NAMM show, what was it, 5 or 6 years ago?
Yeah.
He came out. We were supposed to do a clinic for Hohner, and there was no piano, so he actually went and got a piano from the Yamaha booth or whatever.
Casio.
He's like, "Here you go, Howard," and
Yeah, he carried it over.
yeah,
And
he
gave it
set
to
us up.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
beautiful, humble, talented cat.
He's an amazing musician, really. Incredibly knowledgeable about all different kinds of technology, but also just a tremendous amount of heart and soul. Yeah.
You
So,
were talking a little bit about this sort of new, not background music per se, but sort of like music to a film that doesn't exist or whatever. That what you were describing reminded me of what Rich Dworsky used to do with not just like the radio scripts where he was playing the organ, but some of the more lyrical, evocative, more poetic moments of A Prairie Home Companion with Garrison,
yes. Yes.
where Rich would just sit and blow his way through something, and maybe he'd quote this and that where he thought it was appropriate, but he was amazing at that sort of incidental but incredibly heartfelt and soulful music that would accompany like a poem or something. I mean, I used to be in tears all the time with that cat. So I love that kind of music. So I'm excited to hear what you come up with in that regard.
Yeah, it's like I said, I really was not conscious of what the structures of these things were when I was doing them, other than I was trying to impart structure. And then some of them I didn't listen to for a month. And just a few days ago, I started listening to them again, and I went, this one's really good. This one isn't. This one needs a little editing, but some of them just stand on their own just from start to finish. And I can't say I'm excited about it so much as I feel very determined to get this out, because in these times, we just don't know exactly how to reach out to the world as musicians, and we're trying to figure it out. And are we ever going to sell physical product again? We're going to go on gigs and sell CDs. Are people going to buy them?
I don't know, man. I mean, everything is literally up in the air right now. I mean, nobody knows. There are lots of people trying to get ahead of things. I'm getting contact about entertainment companies that have like a plan. They have a product they want to sell in this platform. I mean, there are people who are always going to be thinking along those lines, and there are people who are really comfortable in a digital format. Locally, Rich Stitzel and his whole Dramantra program for years.
He's been doing that anyway, and it's great.
Yeah, and so he's just keeping doing it. And there are people who have those sort of digital outlets that they had them already, and they just kind of carried on through this. Whereas the rest of us are sort of playing catch up. But yeah, it's really hard to. I try to compartmentalize as much as I can, and just trust that. I mean, the fact that the last 3 months there's been no content being produced anywhere, not in Hollywood, not worldwide. Nobody's producing any movies, television shows. To my knowledge, I mean, they're probably studio recordings are probably a little easier thing to deal with in times like these, and as long as it's not like an orchestra. But that's another thing. Choirs, orchestras. I mean, how in the age of social distancing, at least for the immediate future, are we going to deal with that? I know everything downtown this year has been canceled, but
yeah, it's really.
How are we going to creep back to that?
Man, it's so much of culture is transmitted by groups of people working together.
The community.
Ballet companies, theater companies, orchestras, operas. I mean, these are like huge enterprises, and people, it's a life-changing experience to be at a live performance, and somehow it's not the same if you're looking at a screen.
It's not the same at all. I mean, I've done some collaborations while under quarantine. Most notably, recently, Graham Zach wrote a great song called "Come Home Again." He invited 32 people to be a part of the track. We filmed ourselves playing the tune, and for me, it was various instruments. Then he took our tracks, which mine were recorded to Logic. I think he was using Logic in whatever format. I mean, sometimes it was cell phone recordings. And he put all these things together, and the result is just this really cool boxed performance where the singers are here and they come and go and the instrumentalists come and go. It's a cool experience to watch, and it was really painstaking to put together. But that's a whole other type of work, and that's a whole other type of satisfaction. Like what I've been longing for, and I know you have too, is interaction. Because as a musician, as a guitar player especially, I mean, playing with people like yourself, and people who really challenge my sense of myself musically, I mean, my own sense of musicality and what my abilities even are. Like, it takes somebody kind of kicking you in the ass and sort of pushing your ability to another level in order to really truly get to a satisfying place as an improviser, certainly.
Yeah,
And
I mean, we as musicians,
that give and take is necessary, and it's
yes.
I'm lost without it.
We learn from each other. That's that people go to schools like jazz schools, and but really the best things that happen in the jazz schools is the students who play with each other and play with their teachers. The
Right.
learning is not transmitted by writing things down on a piece of paper. It's transmitted by interaction and having someone play something, you're like, wow, what the heck was that? And you have to figure it out in order to play with them. And if you can't play with them. This is like a trial by fire. But speaking of which, the whole digital thing, I do have an online harmonica school,
Indeed,
And
yes.
I've had it for, this is the 10th year, believe it or not. This company called Artist Works. It's one word.
Right.
And for all of you watching us, Chris is on quite a few of the videos that I recorded
Yeah,
of
I was
performances.
on your maiden voyage, I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very proud of it. It's an amazing company run by David and Patricia Butler out in Napa, California. They have about 35 teachers now. It's
Hmm.
grown to be a very, it's a virtual music conservatory, really. And
And it's
for
been around for 10 years. I mean, so
well,
this is a
longer.
platform you're comfortable with. I mean,
Yes, yes, it's something that that was, you know, a relatively not small, but a relative, you know, was a part of my musical life. And I would answer a few videos a week from students. They can send me videos, and I answer them. Now it's assumed much more importance because this is one of the only ways I have to communicate with people.
right.
And there are harmonica players from all over the world, some of whom are absolute beginners, some of whom are amazing players who
Hmm.
are there to get more amazing. And so I'm really loving it. And many more of them are sending me videos. It's probably 5 times as much as it was before because everybody, most people are stuck in the same situation and they're working on trying to improve themselves. So, in a way, what's happening, I kind of feel like one of those medieval monks who sits there in his cell writing an illuminated manuscript. All this amazing art that happened during the Dark Ages of Europe when people were staying
Sequestered.
yeah, to try to not die from the plague. And this is what sort of our modern day equivalent in a way. And so, you know,
Yeah.
tornado warning issued. Oh my God, South Central Cook County. Oh, jeez.
South Central Cook County. That's a ways from you.
Yeah. Hopefully it's a ways from you too.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, I look out my window upstairs and I'm facing due west, and maybe a mile west of here is just farmland and open fields. So
Yeah.
it's
You're
a
more
thing for sure.
So anyway, assuming a tornado doesn't come and you know, I have to play the Wizard of Oz theme.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll stay away.
We have actually put out From the Vaults Volume 3, or is it Volume 6 or whatever the heck it is? Volume 3. Volume 1 was Harmonica Jazz. Volume 2 is No Bad Vibes Quintet, MBV. And Volume 3, which we were working on for a while, is this.
Oh wow. Yeah, man.
I found a cassette in my attic of a recording of the first concert that Jethro Burns and I played together as a band, a quartet with John Parrott, a great
Yeah,
rhythm
yeah.
guitarist from Milwaukee, and
You
Jeff
played
Chet.
that for me years ago, and like you're like, I should release this. I should clean this up and release it.
Well, I did, and it sounds great. In 1983, so I was in the middle of all of this different stuff, you know, playing with Chevrolet and the Balkan Rhythm Band and No Bad Vibes, and then I've always loved acoustic swing music. Like I just have a special spot in my heart for it, and this was the first group in Chicago that I was in that had a chance to do this stuff. And Acoustic Express was kind of the reincarnation of this idea, originally starting out to play swing, but then it branched out into many more things. And I'm incredibly proud of the CD that we made. It's called Time Capsules.
Yeah.
The reason why it's called that is that these things were recorded at 4 different times over the span of a few years in different physical spaces, one of which was Larry Kohut's living room.
Yeah.
Another was Cafe Express in Evanston, which doesn't exist anymore.
True. Studio
another-
Chicago, I think it was,
Yeah, Studio Chicago.
with the great John Rice producing.
No. Did
Didn't
he?
he? Yeah, he sat in on those sessions. I'm pretty
Oh,
sure.
I forgot about that. My God.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, with one of the tracks that we used from that session, I think Nuage came from that session.
Well, 3 of them did, actually. Nuage, Lay Lady Lay, and Lady Be Good.
Yeah,
Or from
yeah.
that session.
John Rice was in the control room, man.
Oh,
Checking
man,
it
I
out.
forgot about that. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
And
I
then,
spoke to him for like 6 hours the other night. It was awesome.
yeah, he's another one of those really great Chicago musicians.
My
Who plays
goodness, yeah.
a bunch of instruments and was a big fan of Jethro's and
Well, he was a student of Jethro, I suppose, wasn't he? Yeah.
yeah, and along with Don Sternberg, he was Jethro's protege and great mandolin player. And originally we were supposed to play a gig, a CD release at Steve Rashid's wonderful club in Evanston, Studio 5, right when this pandemic was
Right.
at full strength. And of course, Steve canceled the whole season. But we got John Parrott and
Oh man.
Jim Cox on bass, who's a wonderful bass player,
Yeah.
and to reprise all of this music. And one of the things that's cool about this CD, which you can find the tracks on Spotify and some of them are on YouTube, but the actual CD, which we have
Balkansamba.com, right?
well, we have to figure out a way of selling it because CD Baby doesn't sell physical CDs anymore. So it's a whole thing. And I'm going to have a new website very soon. Levyland.com is going to be totally revamped, and we'll be able to sell things.
Mm-hmm. So you have an online store that you fill the orders. Yeah,
I will. Yes. So
that's how Frank Zappa survived the '80s. When he didn't have any distribution really, he just produced the records and warehoused them himself, and then sent them out via mail order. And he was turning over records, thousands at a time in the '80s.
I didn't know that he was doing that. What was it called? Bizarre?
No, that was in the early '70s. Barking Pumpkin was the label.
Oh, Barking Pumpkin, yes.
Yeah.
He had Bizarre and Straight also.
Yeah. A lot of great Wildman Fisher.
Oh my God, yes.
Lord Buckley. And
I know all this wild.
And of course Captain Beefheart, which is Howard and I are both very big fans of the Captain.
Yeah, and I got to see him live once. A double bill with Zappa at the Aragon Ballroom.
Wow, that's so fantastic.
Both bands sounded amazing. I mean, just absolutely amazing.
Wow.
So 1970 or 71, I can't remember what year it was. But anyway, yeah, Chris, for all of you who don't know, Chris can play a lot of Zappa's music note for note just by memory.
Well, a lot of people can these days. It's crazy. College kids and, high schoolers are, Black Page? Yeah, sure. I got it right here in my back pocket.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, Zappa is somebody who defies category and who appeals really broadly. I mean, it's sort of like a stone with a ripple effect that his music has had, all over the world. Because, I mean, he was a really maniacal genius.
Oh, yeah.
And he always got the best musicians to play music. I actually always wanted to play with him because I thought...
I have dreams about playing with him. And it's the same dream. It's some college auditorium, and they're on stage, and I can hear him playing a guitar solo, ambiently in the house, and I'm just waiting backstage to go on. I never do, but that's one of the... since I was a kid, I've had that dream.
Interesting.
Yeah. You probably could have played with him. He loved harmonica players.
Well, when I was touring with Kenny Loggins in the mid-'90s, I did that album, Outside from the Redwoods, which was also a video.
Yeah.
And Ed Mann was in that band for the first summer's tour. And Ed had just, Frank was dying of cancer.
Yeah.
And, Ed really, he said, Frank would love you, but he said, this is not a good time to go and meet him. He just couldn't bring himself to even visit Frank at that point. It was just too sad. And so I understood, but when I first started hearing Zappa and started developing my harmonica playing later in the mid 70s and into the 80s, when I started really being able to play a lot of stuff, I always wanted to figure out some way to do it, but it never happens. So
it's one of those things, man.
So I don't know if you want to talk about John Prine a little bit.
Yeah, well, I wanted to kind of go back. I've heard you tell this story. Howard and I have played many tours together over 19 years, and we've done workshops. And I've heard the evolution of his style of playing and his discovery of the playing chromatically, meaning all 12 notes on a blues harp. Right. So there's that.
Yeah.
So arguably, not even arguably, you invented that way of playing, and so I think that's that's what goes missing sometimes. I think from, the program with people, especially in the industry, don't necessarily realize, oh, Howard he's a virtuoso harmonica player, or, I hear this all the time, and oh, he's a great, he's as good as John Popper or whomever, and John Popper's great, but like not a lot of people realize that you reinvented the instrument in order to play it like that. Like there was one recording back in the 19 teens of somebody doing what you call an overblow and getting a note that didn't necessarily belong, but that was the only time. But they sure as hell didn't develop ways of playing bebop or thinking about the instrument in terms of a keyboard, being able to play any mode or any scale or any sort of combination of things and counterpoint and the rest of it.
Yeah.
Could you go into that a little bit? I think a lot of people would get a kick out of at least the Cliff Notes version of it, if you can.
Sure. Well, I started playing harmonica when I was 18, having heard blues, Chicago blues harmonica players, and I was a pianist from the age of 8, and I had been improvising and writing my own music since I was 8 years old. So I was
some of which we've played.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff I wrote when I was like 18 or 19 is really good music, and one of them is the title track for one of my albums, Tonight and Tomorrow, on Chicago Sessions.
Which is a great record.
Thank you. So I started out just wanting to play blues, and when I started being able to bend notes, it was like, this whole other door opened for me, because being a piano player, you can't bend notes per se.
You can with a pitch wheel, baby.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So bluesy.
Albert King lives over there on the left hand. So anyway, I'm playing, and I realized there's notes that are missing on this instrument. And this frustrated me. It's like playing a piano with keys that are broken on it. And you go to a music practice building at school, and there's pianos that have broken keys, and you go, oh geez, I need to try another room. Here, this one has all 88 keys working.
Right.
Well, this instrument was missing actually 6 notes.
Naturally.
Which is a lot in 3 octaves to be missing. And especially this one used to bug me. If I want to play the 4 chord. There's no flat 7th. Yeah, wonderful, right? Shoot the sky. So that note wasn't there. Just the normal.
You're not hearing that?
To be able to across the neck of the guitar. You couldn't do it. So the flat 3rd, I thought, man, I'm 18 years old. What do I know? Like, it's a musical instrument. All the notes have to be on it somehow. That's what I said to myself.
Right.
So when I discovered that when you could bend the draw notes on the bottom, and on the top, you could bend the blow notes, because on the top, those notes are higher. So I thought, what happens if I try to bend the blow notes on the bottom of the harmonica? That's a logical question. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting there in my dorm room, and, with this harmonica that I bought at Manny's in New York for $2.25, right? That's
R.A.P. Manny's.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I loved that place. So I'm sitting at Northwestern in my dorm, and it's a cold winter, and I'm sitting there in room 105 at Bob Hall. My God, I just remembered it. And I'm trying to bend the 6th hole down, because you got the D, the E flat, and the E. But I'm looking for the F. And in the 7th hole, you have G and F sharp. So there's no place where the F could be just from normal bending. And finally, one day I'm playing and I get this note pops out, not cleanly like that. First, it started bending down, the D, and then the F popped out. And lo and behold, there it is. And I was very excited about that. And then I thought,
Yeah.
well, maybe all the other places on the instrument where the notes aren't, maybe if I use the same techniques, maybe I could get the other ones. And it turns out that that's true. So in the fourth hole, so now in the middle of the harmonica, and on the bottom, that's all just bends, but there's one note missing. And you can get that on the first hole. It's very hard on a G harmonica, but that was the key harmonica that I had at the time, and I learned it. And then on the top, I reversed the procedure by trying to play draw bends where you can't do a draw bend. And miraculously, those notes popped up to the missing notes. So now I have a full 3-octave chromatic scale.
So here's where I'm going to stop you, okay? Now, that's all well and good for most people. Oh, I found the missing notes. And why did you find the missing notes? Out of necessity. You were playing an instrument that seemingly didn't have all the notes, and all instruments should have all the notes. It's, right? I mean,
Right.
should be able to play anything. So I get that. I get you finding the notes. But the technique to where you have to adjust your mouth in order for another harmonic or actual fundamental pitch to peak out, and then be able to go there on a moment's notice. Like you can blaze through a 64th note passage with that note intact, having trained your lips to go to that place where that note's going to pop out. And that's what's amazing to me. Like just the facility with which that you are able to use all of these notes that you found on the instrument in conventional ways and non-conventional ways, like playing bebop or playing like a tone row. It doesn't really matter what you do. I mean, it's remarkable. That's what's truly innovative about what you did for the instrument worldwide, baby.
Well, yeah, it has changed. It has changed the way people look at the instrument. Like you said, there's one guy in the 1930s, I think, who
Was it the
went out on a recording, and apparently people say, and I actually listened to one that Toots Thielman played a few of them on diatonic. He was not a great diatonic player. He was a chromatic player, genius, but he obviously stumbled across this. I'm sure a bunch of other people stumbled across it. This technique. Will Scarlett, who played with Hot Tuna, used it a lot for about a year or two in the mid 60s, around 65, 66 maybe. But and so some people try to say, oh yeah, Howard Levy, he wasn't the first one. Yeah, I don't care.
No, you were the first one. You were the first one to be able to play bebop, Macedonian folk music, any style, really. I mean,
I'm the first person who took this seriously and devoted as much time as I did to integrate it into my style, to have a style that integrated these extended techniques into the mainstream of my playing. And it wasn't easy at first,
right?
Because I didn't know anything about how the sounds were being produced. And what's made it easier over the years is people figuring out how the reeds are interacting inside the harmonica.
Right.
And some harmonicas straight out of the box, they work really great. Most don't.
They have to be customized.
There are people who are customizing. This is customized by Joe Falisco. It's Hohner harmonica.
Joe Falisco, an amazing blues harmonica player, and among other great guy.
He's a genius machinist, harmonica player, guitarist, who lives in Joliet, Illinois, and he knows more about the inner workings of this instrument than any person in the world. So, and he has spawned an entire subculture of harmonica customizers and people who are experimenting with making different kinds of parts to see how they'll affect the tone. Different kind comb material, different read cover plates. It's it's a great time to be a diatonic harmonica player, because there's really high quality modifications available right now.
But one of the things I wanted to mention, though, like to sort of set you apart from those who say, well, yeah, he wasn't the first to do it. The thing is at the time when you were developing this technique, you weren't necessarily aware of that. It had only been made aware of that in retrospect, correct?
Yes,
Like
yes, totally. I mean,
you totally worked it out for yourself,
yes,
and then it was like, oh, okay, well, this person did that, this person did that. That's the thing that's remarkable to me. In a similar way, I think you have much more of a conventional grasp on music, but Alan Holdsworth, who you know I adore,
oh yeah,
who's been gone 2 years now, sadly, but he taught himself everything he knew. He had his own system for looking at things. You know, he had his own system for what scales were called and how chords were shaped or voicings, and this sort of like an A with an X through a circle is sort of his, some designation of his, and it's just like you work it out for yourself. You figure out different systems that are unique to you, and I think that you were able to do that in a way to where you, when you did deconstruct it, you were able to explain it in very, you know, just like pragmatic sort of ways, you know, like in a pedagogical sort of way.
mm-hmm.
And, you know, to my amazement, now this didn't seem to be the case. Maybe it was, I'm not sure. But when we started playing together around 2001, 2002, there weren't many players, to my knowledge, that can do that with any sort of facility. But as the years went on, and we went to these spa conventions, and we went over to the Hohner factory in Germany, and then that tour we did of the East Coast, where we were 2 nights at the Baggett Inn, and we did the workshop during the day. I was starting to hear harmonica players kind of do Howard, you know, like kind of get there on some things.
Oh yeah,
And it blew me away.
yeah.
So I mean, to me, it's just sort of a, hey, buddy.
The true star of the show.
Yeah, yeah. He's always saying hi. All right, get down. Go get your bone. But so when we were doing these workshops, you know, you would explain it all in a very understandable sort of way. And to me, that's the biggest favor that you could ever do for the instrument. Was, you know, a lot of people are esoteric in their genius and can't necessarily explain what they do. I mean, I remember I mean, you know, obviously not talking shit about one of my idols, but Alan Holdsworth's video was a interesting anthropological study, but but kind of relatively useless if taken without the explanations that were provided by the publishing company, because he didn't know necessarily how to communicate about what he did.
Yeah,
And he certainly wasn't able to put it into conventional musical terms, like
it's
using
very
the
hard.
vocabulary in the language, you know.
Well, also you have to want to teach, and so I started teaching when I was like 22 or 23 or something, because I thought it was a way I could make a living. And, you know, I was still working factory jobs. I worked as a punch press operator, a spot welder, a furniture mover, a house painter. I did all sorts of,
I'm bound for that sort of work myself,
oh man,
unfortunately, man, with this pandemic, you know. The
it's,
old gray bear,
oh man.
but we'll see.
But that's why I started teaching, and I discovered that I had to figure out how to explain stuff to people. So I was doing it for a long time, because, you know, my knowledge of theory and harmony from piano was helpful, but a lot of harmonica players I discovered had no idea what notes they were playing. They didn't know what the names of the notes are, because you can't see anything here.
Right.
If you start playing this instrument, it's more like riding a bicycle than playing an instrument. It's feel.
Yeah. Right.
It's the only instrument that there is that the musician who's playing it can't see it and isn't using fingers at all. So you're just holding it in your hands and you're kind of visualizing something.
Right.
And I remember, like, you know, I'm starting to play and I'm seeing something. I'm seeing shapes and colors, And then finally, one day I realized, hey, I'm seeing the keyboard. It took me about 2 years to realize that that's what I was seeing. And so that's what started me being able to play the two instruments at the same time.
Right.
But also, when I would teach harmonica players, I would explain to them, okay, you should really buy a keyboard and understand that on the C harmonica, it's the same thing as the white keys of the piano. And I always teach on a C because C is the basic key of Western music that every instrument is pretty much set up for. No black keys, the black keys are all the sharps and flats, the accidentals, by definition, they have to be called F sharp or G flat. And
We did your second DVD out of the box on the
C harp.
on the C harp. That was all every a tune in every key in many styles, but on just the C harp.
Yes, and you played on 10 of those tunes with me.
Yep.
That's I am extremely proud of that one. And
It's fun to watch. I mean, I look like I could stand to lose 70 pounds, but it's fun to watch.
I couldn't have done it without you, and I mean it. And I wrote all those tunes in preparation for this thing, and some of them we just did blues on two of them together in keys that nobody normally would play blues in, like B flat on a C harp.
One of them finally ended up on our recording.
Which one?
Bossa in A.
Oh yeah, the Bossa in A. Yeah, and I wrote a very simple version of it for the video, but then when we started performing it, I wrote a bridge to the tune that goes to C, and it's a really nice tune.
A beautiful tune, man. One of my favorites.
Well, you play it beautifully.
Oh well,
So,
thanks.
it's a mutual admiration society.
Hey, what are you gonna do?
But we had a great time touring together, and I hope we get to do that again. And
We will, man. I mean, one of the things that somebody said this, and it's been kind of axiomatic for me, is there was the great Spanish flu of 1918, 1919, but the decade that followed were the Roaring '20s.
yeah,
People were in ballrooms. People were. I mean, to say they were communing is, an understatement. So I think we will get back to a semblance of what we had before. I think it'll be a lot of, just a lot of apprehension, a lot of stress, false starts maybe. We'll find our way eventually. And there will be a time when, okay, I think we have this under control and people are not getting sick anymore. I mean, it's sort of those you'll know when it happens sort of thing. But until then, it's going to be a bit of a struggle. But, that's why I wanted to do sort of an interview series because, there's just such a wealth of talent and know-how, and there's so many stories, and there are just, so many beautiful things that not a lot of people know about. And, but I think we will definitely get down to business again. And so you were just saying about the C harp, and you were playing everything in C.
Oh yeah.
And you teach on the C harp, and you try to visualize, because that was a question I actually had, and that's one that I actually asked in one of our workshops, was, so you have to have at least, if not facility, then familiarity with the keyboard, to be able to play certain scale shapes, at least from C to C on a keyboard, in order to get to the point to where you're able to play with the kind of facility that, because I've heard some players that can approach what you do, they're nowhere near as fluid or fast as you can play, or as free, but the fundamentals are there. So I was just curious as to whether them developing some keyboard chops or whatever was part and parcel to getting that happening.
Absolutely, good keyboard or guitar, because an instrument where you can actually play chords and understand chord voicings, because a single note instrument, you're a lot of times you have to arpeggiate to get a chord. So in all the great composers in classical music were pianists to one extent or another. Some of them were like the greatest virtuosos of their time, and some of them were just people who used the piano as a tool, and some of them were guitarists. I think Berlioz was a guitarist, and Villa-Lobos was a cellist, his first instrument. But all the greatest jazz musicians, I mean, Dizzy Gillespie, just genius, brilliant, amazing arranger too. People don't talk about that. He
Right.
played piano pretty well, and he
All
worked
those
out
guys did.
everything on piano. Coltrane worked everything out on piano. I don't think he was a great pianist, but he understood the keyboard extremely well and worked everything out there on all his most advanced harmonies. And then the single note instrument becomes something of a, this becomes like an obsession. Like, how far can you take this to bring it up to the highest levels of music?
Hmm.
Like Paganini did that with the violin. He was a guitarist, so and he had extremely long fingers, and so he could figure out ways of playing all of these three-note chords on the violin and counterpoint and stuff. He couldn't have done that if he were, quote, just a violinist. He had to understand theory and harmony and counterpoint and play a chordal instrument as well. And he's one of my big inspirations, by the way. And so this type of understanding leads to the expansion of single note instruments into other dimensions. And I'm never going to stop finding new things on this instrument. And also, I'm just incredibly happy to see all of these other people playing really well using the techniques that I've popularized, using them in their own ways.
Because it works.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, and that's a tribute to you really giving some serious thought to the pedagogy of the instrument. I mean, because you could teach blues harp to me, of all people. In fact, there were a couple long car trips where you actually got me to bend a couple notes
I remember.
on my Hohner C Marine Band. But to really go into detail just about how to think about music in a different way, how to think about the instrument in a different way, and really deconstruct what you do in a way that makes it understandable for people is fantastic. I mean, not a lot of people can do that. I mean, you can be the most amazing player when you just do the most mind-melting shit, but if you can't explain it, I mean, it's just assume. I mean, that's for other people to try to explain or speculate about, right? Other people will analyze your music if you can't do it. But the fact that you did and you took the care and the time to really do it is a tribute to all your, I want to, I'll call them disciples, but that's actually what they are. I mean, Howard gets mobbed at airports in China. It's unbelievable.
No, I was surprised when I went there how many people knew about my playing. People coming, a Trio Globus tour of China. Lots of harmonica players showing up afterwards, and I didn't know anyone there knew who I was. So it was a very big surprise to me. But Asia, people are crazy about the harmonica in Asia. I played the Asia Pacific Harmonica Festival in Taiwan about 5 years ago, I think, 4 years ago. I don't remember. And there were 3,000 harmonica players at this convention.
Oh, that's right. I remember you telling me. Yeah.
Playing every different style of instrument. There's so many different kinds. And a lot of them playing at extremely high levels and taking it very seriously. And, the harmonica actually has its origins in the Far East.
Right.
The free, indirectly blown free beating reeds. There are these Oriental Asian mouth organs called, in China it's called the shou or the sheng. I can't remember. Oh, the shou is Japanese. No, sheng is the Chinese one. And so people are pretty sure that it was European contact with Asia that inspired the invention of the harmonica in around 1820 or so in southern Germany. And originally they were all made by hand. And as the industrial age came, Matthias Hohner was like the Henry Ford of the harmonica. He figured out how to make harmonica on assembly lines, and then they got really cheap once they figured out how to use machines. And that's when the instruments started spreading around the world in the mid-19th century, and it got to America in large numbers after the Civil War. And that's where eventually people started playing blues on it instead of just European folk music, which was the whole idea for the Richter-tuned diatonic, was to be able to play the 1 and 5 chord on the bottom and the melody in the middle, and to be able. So this instrument is the only wind instrument that uses the breath in both directions too. So it's more like, in a certain way, it's like a guitar where you're doing a downstroke and an upstroke, or like a violin where the down bow and the up bow.
And rhythmically, you said years ago that you were sitting in, or you were listening to a drum lesson, your son Miles.
Yes.
And you had figured sort of a relationship between rudimental drumming and the breath direction that you would play, that would lead you to play certain rhythms and such.
Yes. I started realizing that in order to build up speed past where I had been on the harmonica, that I needed to stop thinking exclusively about what notes I was playing, like the piano keyboard. I needed to think about the rhythm of my breathing. Mm-hmm. And because you could play 8 notes, and those 8 notes have their own breathing rhythm. It's blow,
left, right,
draw,
left, left, right, left, left, right.
blow, draw, blow, draw, blow, like da 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 da. You know. Mm-hmm. So, and that's like ba 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 ba, and well, to be more concise about it, the drumming has these rudiments, and just about every rudiment except for the single stroke roll involves a bounce of a stick. Mm-hmm. Double stroke roll, da 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 da, mama dada, whatever you want to do. And on the harmonica, I figured that, ooh, thunder. Ooh, I better close my back window. Just take
Okay, I'm going to pause the video. This is a little pause, folks. Yeah, we're back. Yeah, it's the weather's been pretty tumultuous here in the Midwest.
The whole country.
Yeah, a lot of flooding out here, man. I mean, I got really lucky. I just got a little seepage that didn't amount to very much, because I've got my basement sort of drain tiled and things, but there's still some seepage that comes out in the utility room. But I've just been hearing horror stories about people.
A lot of people's
Yeah.
basements. My neighbors next door to me had their basement flooded. I have flood control that was put in by the previous owners, and thank God for that. So anyway, oh yeah, I flooded 3 times before that when I was renting this place before I bought it. Anyway, so the bounce of a stick is like sliding from one hole to another. So a double stroke roll on the harmonica would be, it's blow, draw. That I'm only changing the direction every 2 notes. But the difference between a harmonica and a drum is that on a drum, the rebound gets harder after the first one. It's harder to get the stick to bounce more than once without some specialized techniques.
Right.
Some drummers have developed the molar techniques and single-handed rolls and all sorts of stuff. Very esoteric. The harmonica, that stuff's easy because all you have to do is slide. Really, nothing to it. So a triple stroke roll on drums, it's very hard. On harmonica, I'm just going blow, draw. As long as I keep my...
Oh, yeah, it's just that. Just do that and you'll be fine.
It's nothing. Anyone could do this, as long as your embouchure isn't too floppy. You know, if you get real sloppy with your lips, forget it.
I've got sloppy lips. That's why I wasn't able to do it, you know.
Well, yeah, no, this is something that takes some effort. I mean, none of the stuff about harmonica that looks easy or something. People say, you make it look so easy. That's a high compliment. It's, the whole position of your jaw and of your lips is something unnatural. It's not what we use in speaking English,
right?
Or doing the things that we normally do. It's kind of an exaggerated pose. And all the breath direction changes are coming from down here.
Right.
That one it's 3 draws, just one breath, one blow, a draw. There's 8th note, so it's like da ba ba ba.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. See, and once you understand that is the support that you have to give from down here, you can do it fast instead of thinking notes to slow you down. But I am thinking notes too. But
Well, but incorporating the
that's my harmonica concerto.
concerto. I absolutely adore that movement.
A la Paganini. That was my inspiration for that.
That's the 4th movement, right?
Third movement.
The 3rd movement.
And then the counterpoint stuff that you were talking about, that sounds better on a lower harmonica. That, from long car rides, I was trying to figure out how can I play 2 melodies at once, a melody and a counter melody. And you're very limited on the instrument because you can't blow and draw at the same time. And, you can the breath direction.
Really? I'm sure it's only a matter of time before you get that going.
Well, I'll have a tombstone over me when that happens. So, but the harmonica, the embouchure I use is just a pucker. But some people play with a tongue block embouchure for single notes. And the tone is different, and a lot of the traditional blues players like that sound, and they can do all the bending and overblows even with that technique. I don't do that, but I use tongue blocking to get intervals. And
so that always perplexes the hell out of me.
And as much counterpoint as you can get from a harmonic.
Yeah. But the thing that was amazing to me, when you do the octaves, you have to overblow one of the octave notes to tune it against the fundamental pitch.
Bends.
Is that correct?
2 of those were bends.
Yeah, that's what it. So you have to. The one that's there is fundamental and integral, and the other one you're bending down.
Felisko showed me that. I didn't know you could do that. It never occurred to me. So there's just worlds within worlds on this instrument.
All right, play the Bach real quick. Play the Bach. Oh, just play the Bach.
Whoops. Yeah. There's adjacent fourths with using all different kinds of techniques. But yeah, the Beethoven concerto, sort of a paraphrase of Fritz Kreisler's cadenza for the Beethoven violin concerto, was the first thing that I figured out. The melody is. So I did. That thing.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of it as left hand and right hand.
Sure. When you play the Bach thing as well, like that's the one I wanted you to play the Bach. And if that weren't enough.
Et cetera, et cetera. That's from Jesu.
Joy of Man's Desiring.
Yes. And so that's another thing I figured out how much of the accompaniment I could carry through with a melody. And there's another thing that I do a little bit of on there that I do more of on some other things, like my solo version of Amazing Grace, because you got 2 notes that are the same note, one on the blow, and the other on the draw. So the second whole draw and the third whole blow are the same notes because of this Richter tuning. So it's the idea of getting the 5 chord on the inhale and the 1 chord on the exhale, and then all the scale notes in the middle until you run out at the top.
So that's sort of a pivot point for you then, where you have a like register, right?
Well, excuse me. Oh, it's 7th hole is where the instrument changes where the blow notes get higher than the draw notes, because there's 4 draw notes per octave from the 4th hole up, and there's only 3 blow notes per octave the whole way across.
But the note that's the same note on the draw as on the blow,
yes,
they're just right next to each other. So that's how you're able to.
So when I play, sounds like a drone is going on there. My concerto, first movement, sort of a Scottish sounding tune.
Oh yeah.
The left side of my mouth is alternating between 2 draw and 3 blow, but you don't hear it because you're paying attention to the melody. And those little chords that are coming in, like the Irish pipes, the Uilleann pipes, which I'm imitating. You know, a lot of what I do, I'm imitating other instruments in my mind or physically. You know,
I love watching the agape mouths in the audience when you start doing that stuff.
That's one of the problems. Is I play all sorts of stuff, and then the only thing people remember is that.
Yeah, well, you do suck.
And I blow too.
So let's fast forward a little bit. Thank you for all of that. That's fantastic. Sure. Let's fast forward to your time with John Prine.
Okay.
Could you? We've both actually worked with a contemporary of his. You for several years longer than I, but Bonnie Kolak.
Yes.
Folk singer extraordinaire, whom I actually got to produce one of her records, and I'm very, very proud of that album, that rediscovered album. But that's where that association was, right? It was sort of Bonnie Kolak, John Prine. They knew each other from the Earl of Old Town, correct?
Yes. Yeah, well, they were the 3 big stars of the Chicago folk scene, as it's called, even though they were each extremely different from each other, and their music, some of their music branched into different areas. But it was Steve Goodman, who was the first one that I played with and met in 1976. And then John Prine, who I met in 77 and recorded with on an album that Steve produced called Bruised Orange. And I toured with him in 78, 79. And after that, I started playing with Bonnie, probably in 80, 81, I can't remember what year. And they're all very different, but they all were part of this very amazing and I don't even know the word, but fertile Chicago folk scene. These people are all fantastic songwriters. And they wrote incredibly deep and meaningful songs. They weren't writing music so like, I want to hear this one, I'm writing this because I want it to be played on the radio or something. They were writing it because that's who they were. And if they intersected with audiences that wanted to hear it, that was great. And each of them did.
I love that. That might actually go away with this pandemic, but we'll talk about that.
But Steve was an amazing guy. He had he was maybe 5'2", and had the energy of and the presence of someone who was 7 feet tall. He just lived every day to the fullest because he knew he had leukemia, which was he got it when he was 19, and he lived to be 36. But John was one of those people who there's no one like him. Well, all 3 of them, actually. There's absolutely nobody like John. Nobody wrote lyrics like he did. He was absolutely original, very, very like thoughtful, and he just observed people. I talked to him about it while we were on the tour a lot. Like man, how did you start writing these songs? He said, I just observe people, watch things.
Hmm.
And his songs are like little movies. You could make a movie based
Yeah.
on a whole bunch of his songs. They have this sort of like you stepped into the middle of someone else's life,
Right.
and you can see them come alive when you listen to the words.
Right. Harry
And,
Chapin does that for me too, like the story
yeah, it's a
songwriters.
similar thing.
Yeah.
Yes. And but John's background was his family was from Kentucky, and so it had this sort of rootsy background. His brother Dave played a lot of old timey music, and John used to play guitar along with him, and uh, got really good time from playing with Dave. And his finger picking style was so personal sounding, and he
He
had
definitely had, yeah, he definitely had that. It was really
great,
unique.
great time.
Yeah.
And incredibly soulful. Whenever we played, every night, he never just like dialed it in. He sang those lyrics from his heart. And the funny thing about it is that he articulated things that a lot of people feel but can't say. And part of this was that his writing, his lyric writing, was alternated between, or had simultaneously, was very direct and very surreal, and it accesses your subconscious. He carved words, man, like you could sort of see them carved almost. They were inevitable, and he very rarely used words of more than two syllables. They were short words put together in sentences that were like, I'll get emotional.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I mean, it's just you. This is what
Yeah.
you do. This is real. This is reality. You
Well,
know.
I when I was asked to play with them, even at the time, I thought of myself as more of a jazz musician, although I was playing with a bunch of folk people because sort of, that was, what the prominent thing was in Chicago in terms of national recognition. The
Yeah.
jazz scene here wasn't getting national recognition, and so my ability to play piano and harmonica and whatever else sympathetically with people and listen to the words and everything, it went a long way. And plus, I had really loved folk music since I was a teenager in New York. I got turned on to it. Um, so when I was asked to try out for John's band, um, eventually I ended up playing about 8 instruments with him live. We traveled with a grand piano and a Hammond B3 and a Leslie, and
Hmm.
I played a lot of it simultaneously, set up at right angles to each other. And Jethro Burns lent me a solid body Gibson electric mandolin. I played mandolin on a bunch of stuff, and of course harmonica and penny whistle and accordion
Yeah.
on one tune. And John, at one point while we were touring, he wrote a tune called "Sailing Around." He said, "Hey, Hard." He called me Hard.
Hard.
Uh, I really like it if you could play some steel drums on this one. I said, "Steel? I don't play steel drums," but I knew a bunch of guys in Chicago who had a steel drum band. Jeff Thomas was one of them.
Hmm.
It was called Magnetic Monster, uh, and these guys were really good, and they had access to extremely good instruments.
Hmm.
So through Jeff, I got a steel drum, and I practiced some simple Bach stuff on it, and got enough chops to play one tune in the key of G, uh, which was usually an encore. Uh, and so, we toured all over the country, and for a year, it ended up being so successful that the original 3-month contract got extended. And
Kept getting extended. Yeah.
oh yeah, uh, because the band sounded great. Johnny Burns on guitar and lead harmony vocals, and Pickles Pekarsky, a wonderful bass player, just a sweetheart of a guy who died a few years ago, unfortunately. And the drummer was named Angie Various, and Angie is a jazz drummer, but man, he loved country music, and he listened to every lyric. His playing was just perfect, and so the band really sounded good. We rehearsed a lot and took every song seriously. We rehearsed for weeks before the first tour at SIR when it was down on Chicago Avenue. I remember this. And
Long gone Chicago music lore there, folks.
yeah, yeah. So that was my first big national tour. And I told people that to play with John, I had to forget 90% of what I knew and play the remaining 10% with 100% of my soul. And that's what it was like. And it was an amazing experience. And I got to record a second album with him in Memphis at Sam Phillips Studio, which was
Wow.
a marathon and incredible experience. We recorded more than 2 albums worth of material with some amazing guest artists as well. One of the Everly brothers, I can't remember. Phil. Is it Phil Everly? I just don't remember. And Billy Lee Riley and Sam's sons, Knox and Jerry, produced it. But Sam also produced a few tracks, and I got to meet him, and that was one of the great people I've ever met, along with Dolly Parton. I'd say I'd put them in the same category in terms of their personal charisma and like electric personalities.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, people who moved mountains, for sure.
Yeah, Dolly, and I recorded with Dolly through CJ actually, and that was a joy. Yeah,
Yeah, she always seems like such a nice lady.
oh, she's brilliant and funny, and she cooked me lunch. She looked at me when I walked in the studio. I was real tired from playing a gig the night before, and I hadn't eaten anything. She looked at me and went, "You hungry?" I went, "Yeah." Said, "How'd y'all like a little Southern white trash lunch? I just cooked me up some fried green tomatoes."
So
And
great.
so I ate lunch and then recorded, and she had me play with her on the Tonight Show after that. The song called "Light of a Clear Blue Morning."
Wow.
It was the soundtrack of a movie called Straight Talk.
Sure.
That was my first movie soundtrack.
With Ron, was it James Woods?
James Woods, yes.
He was a radio guy, and she was
Yes.
yeah.
She was a cleaning lady who ended up becoming a talk radio show host. And a lot of it was filmed in Chicago, which
Right.
just coincidence, you know. And the second movie soundtrack I played for was called A Family Thing with James Earl Jones and Robert Duvall. And a lot of that was filmed in Chicago, too.
That's a beautiful movie, man. That's a very
Yes.
cool. I remember. That's a very nice movie. Yeah.
Mid-90s, and I'm the featured instrument on the soundtrack. I'm very
And then, of
proud
course,
that.
you did bum ba dum bum ba Showgirls,
No, I did Striptease.
Striptease, not Showgirls.
Yes.
Striptease. That's
Yeah,
right.
one of the worst
Even
movies.
better. Even better.
Yes. No, I'm very proud of my in and out breathing on that soundtrack. My
Yeah,
heavy
yeah.
breathing. That was something we could spend an hour talking about. That was
Now
an
we won't go into it.
incredibly surreal experience, but it actually was a very positive experience. And I learned a lot about the movie business as well. And that was very surreal and funny.
So take me up through your meeting with Bela, and then how that thing came to pass, and
Okay.
then what you did in the mid '90s when you split with them, and then also the reunion. And I think with that and a few brief discussion of where we're at now, and we can wrap this thing up pretty soon.
Yeah, I'm getting a little tired of,
Yeah.
this is your life here.
Yeah,
But,
Howard Levy. The book's under your desk. I had it sent to you.
oh my God. So anyway, mid '80s, I was touring with Paquito de Rivera a bunch, and also playing with some really great acoustic music people called Trapezoid, who are headquartered in Virginia. And
Love them.
they
Love
were
that.
really great.
Yeah.
I have a very long career, and I've recorded on hundreds of CDs. You can look at the discography on my website and
It's
find
pretty goofy to look at, but yeah.
300, I don't know how many, 400. But that's how I met Bela, because I was up there playing with Trapezoid. And Bela and I ended up hanging out one night at the urging of Lorraine Dweezy, one of the women in Trapezoid, who is a super talented, amazing musician. And she insisted that we play together. So we jammed for like 7 hours that night until the sun rose. And that's how the Flecktones started, because then Bela met Victor and Roy in Nashville, and then he got asked to play a TV show in Louisville called the Lonesome Pine Special. And when we played, he thought this would be great to do it with this band, just to put the four of us together and see what would happen. and we got such a huge response that he booked several other gigs for us. And by the third one, it was like, yeah, let's do this. And then we recorded our first album on Bela's Money, and Warner Brothers Nashville picked up on it. And that was in 1989, released in spring of 1990. And
exploded.
Oh, it did, yeah.
Just exploded.
We were all over national TV, and VH1 had our video playing in heavy rotation. And I did that for through the end of 1992, when I didn't want to do it anymore. It just was just feeling like monotonous to me. Just put it in that in, make it simple. And it was not like I hated anybody or anything like that. I just didn't want to.
Right, you just want to do something else.
And there was no break from it because it kept going like this. And if I had been able to take a break or do it less, but that's not the way showbiz works. You have to do it more and more and more and more to keep going like this. So
got to get off the train, I guess.
Exactly. And so then that's when I started playing a lot in Europe with the oud player Rabia Bukhalil and the great clarinetist composer Michael Riesler. And then I also started playing with Kenny Loggins. And so I was flying back and forth between Europe and California, and then started recording with all sorts of other people. And then we started Trio Global all at the same time. So all of this incredible cross-fertilization of different musical styles was happening all at once. And Trio Globo, we did our first album in 94 and the second one in 95 with Eugene Friesen and Glenn Velez. And those guys were and continue to remain huge influences on my music. And that was a fantastic, and it still is if we ever play together again, a fantastic group.
You will. It will.
And then I just did a whole bunch of other things. I mean, I don't even know where to start, talking about all the different recordings, and wrote my harmonica concerto.
Yeah, your harmonica concerto. Another first, concerto for orchestra and diatonic harmonica.
Yeah, the first real one. I mean, other people had played diatonic harmonica with orchestras before, playing more blues-oriented material.
Right.
But I wrote a classical concerto for diatonic harmonica, and the recording of it that is commercially released was made with the Czech National Symphony in Prague, with the late Paul Freeman conducting, and that's on my. It's a classical album. I guess the title of it is Concerto for Diatonic Harmonica and Orchestra. It also has my chamber suite, which was composed for the Rembrandt Chamber musicians here in Chicago, and also a duet, a Piazzolla duo, written for flute and guitar, played on harmonica and marimba with Dane Richardson, fantastic musician who teaches at Lawrence College in Appleton, Wisconsin.
That's such an incredible record all around. It's really, really great listen there. So all of that sort of brought you up to, umpteen projects and everything. And we started playing together in 2001. And I had heard of you first when I was in high school, because there was a record called Dizzy Gillespie in the UN Orchestra, and Paquito was a featured soloist. And yeah.
Seresta.
So Seresta, one of your tunes that I had no idea it was you, but it was part of a suite of tunes from that album that's incredibly memorable, and the band was killing, and Dizzy still sounded great. I mean, he was it was, one of my favorite recordings, and I had no idea that was your composition. And, of course, in high school, the Flecktones were huge. I mean, and you guys were you were larger than life. But it wasn't until, actually, it was Vijay Teles-Nayak who laid Trio Globo on me. I met Vijay around 95, 96. No, it was 95. And he's like, you should check this out. This guy lives in Evanston or whatever. I didn't put two and two together for a while. And when I did, I was like, wow, I know this song. And you were playing it just arbitrarily one day in a rehearsal. I'm like, I know that. That's from...
That's right. I remember.
That's from a Dizzy Gillespie record that I was in high school. I was like a big thing in high school. He's like, yeah, that's my tune. And then it was just, that blew my head off.
Yeah.
But was it 2010 when the Flecktones reunion, the first
Yeah.
reunion happened?
Yeah. We did a short tour at the end of 2009, beginning of 2010, and then we recorded the Rocket Science album, which came out
Which is a great
2011. That's a really good record, and we did about 130 dates in 2011, 2012, and that was my big reunion with the Flecktones. I wrote a bunch of the music on the album.
Won a Grammy for Life in 11.
Life in 11, which is the Bulgarian 11 rhythm, which I had shown years before to Bela, and he worked on it for years to try to figure out how to play an 11 with a banjo roll, because everything he plays on the banjo is using multiple fingers, so it's not like it's you have to figure out this thing with all your fingers. It's tricky. So and then I'm using that two draw, three blow as a pivot. Yeah. And that's not even how it goes, but I forgot how it goes.
It won a Grammy. So
Yeah,
that's such
There's a bunch of stuff that I had come up with, and I was playing solo on solo gigs because I could never imagine trying to play this with a band. But of course, the Flecktones, Vic and Roy and Bela can pretty much play anything. And
my favorite tune of yours remains UFO Tofu. I think that's one of the coolest things I've ever heard.
Oh my God, yeah, that was Bela's piece that he wrote forward and backward, and that was incredibly difficult to learn the backwards version of it. It's like I wrote it out.
Yeah, I mean the version that's on a record called Live Art, which I don't know if is available anymore. Maybe it is, but it's that's the version. The record version's cool, but the live version, you can really tell everybody's just in the zone, and
it's pretty astonishing.
You're in front of people, and it's just like, Jesus, come on, man.
Well, we agreed when we got back together again that we would not try to play that tune because we were joking. It's like we would take up all our rehearsal time. We worked for weeks on that tune just to be able to play it. I mean,
meanwhile, I was like, you got to play that tune. Whatever.
We thought about it for one of our last tours, and then we went, nah. The rest of the stuff's hard enough,
Check it out, though.
Watcher. And so then, but after that big tour, we took a few years off, and then we started doing summer tours. Sometimes double bills with people like Chick Corea's Electric Band. That was a great experience, and sometimes just a solo, and then playing at festivals. And it was wonderful to get together again for 2 or 3 weeks a year. And then last year we did even a little more. And so we had all these tours planned for this year, and of course,
one in March that was supposed to happen, and alas,
another one in May, and I don't know when that's going to happen again.
Next year, it seems like everybody in good faith or in high hope are taking their schedule out a year from now.
Things have been rescheduled for March, so. I would be remiss if I didn't mention this, which happened last year. This
Songs, Poems, and Stories.
My first book, and I'm actually working on another one, actually 2 others. This is something I am very, I don't even know what the word is, but it's a really big deal for me to be able to put this out. I've been writing poems since I was a little kid, and some of the stories they're all autobiographical. They're pretty funny, about music, and the songs. Having played with some of these amazing songwriters, Steve Goodman and John Prine and Bonnie, and also having just being a musician who listens to everything, and I know a lot of the obviously jazz standards. I admire all those great writers. So my vocal compositions are kind of a combination of a whole bunch of different styles, and Brazilian composers too, like Jobim and people like that. So one of the projects that I hope to be able to do this year, and it takes a lot of focus, is to record a CD of my vocal compositions. And
Right.
since I'm not really a singer, I can sing my own tunes if I'm in the proper frame of mind. I think I do better just recording just myself instead of trying to sing with a band, because that's an art, and I'm not a singer.
It certainly is. Yeah.
So if I can just play piano and sing, or just sing some a cappella stuff with harmonica, do a few overdubs, and I've written, oh God, I don't know, like 40 songs with lyrics, maybe. I don't know how many. And I'll pick the best 10 and try to put it out, and see what happens. I sang a few. I did a few gigs last year where I sang, one with Josh.
Yeah, right.
Ramos on
At the
bass.
Chopin Theater. Yeah.
And another one, a solo concert where I sang like 3 tunes, and nobody walked out or asked for their money back, so it was encouraging.
Well, that's always a good sign.
So it's something that every musician is a singer to one extent or another, and the only time I sang professionally was when I was in my high school rock band, and the guitarist would sing some tunes and I would sing a few tunes that he didn't want to sing, and like, okay, Howard, you sing this one, all right, and of course I can sing,
Sure.
but I'm not a singer, so I just want to put in that disclaimer.
I've been saying that for years about myself. So far, it's worked out pretty well.
Well, Chris, you actually sing a blues on our CD.
I do. Available at fine digital outlets, and I think Amazon still has these, right? Or
Yes, they do. You can still buy the physical
it's
copy.
all on, but it's on iTunes and digital outlets and stuff.
Yes, Art Plus Adrenaline, and we even have T-shirts, and we sold most of them.
We do. We have T-shirts. We have tea cozies. We have
Chris Siebold autographed guitar picks. He
Well,
wrote really, really small on them.
yeah, like you can barely read them. It says Fender Medium. It's kind of weird.
Yes, it's like for those of you who need a Fender Large, we have those as well.
Yep, we got all kinds, and those are more expensive though. You got to lay down some cash for those. Well,
And
hey,
Chris, yes,
thank you for doing this, man. I mean, we could talk all night long, but I just wanted to give some people who may not know about you that are friends, associates, students of mine, and maybe they know a little bit more about you now. And we're all figuring out how to kind of get by in this new paradigm. I'm trying to figure some stuff out myself.
it's a difficult world we're living in right now, and
yeah, and it has been a very stressful 4 year or 3.5 or 3 3/4 years. I mean, it's been kind of living under a cloud anyway.
That's another story.
Without getting into it.
Yeah.
But this with so many livelihoods just either paused or just completely obliterated at this point. It's going to be interesting ride, but I look forward to working with you at least remotely for a while.
Yes.
We'll scheme and dream about what we can do in 1 or 2 years' time. But thanks for taking your time with me, man, and this will be a fun watch. And thank you all for watching, and we'll see you soon. Okay, bye bye.
Bye-bye.